What's going on, everybody? I hope you guys are doing well. Take your time to come into the live stream. I look forward to seeing all of you as you come in here. We have a really interesting conversation today. We're going to talk a little bit about this guy named Jay-Z. Jigga what, Jigga who? Y'all know who he is. And Jay-Z's interesting partnership with the NFL and some of the mixed results we've been seeing from people that we've actually surveyed. We've actually done surveys to see how you guys feel about it. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But before we begin, I'd like to let you guys know who is on the line with me today. I have Miss Nicole Price. Nicole is the author of the book, The Lively Paradox. She's a leadership expert, a consultant, and just a really smart Black lady. And so, Nicole, I'd like to ask, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Awesome. And you said something today that I thought was really interesting. You were actually talking on a topic that I thought was it's kind of a hotbed for controversy right now. As you guys know, Jay-Z just made an interesting partnership deal with the NFL. It's gotten mixed reviews. Some people think it's great. Some people think it's messed up. Some people aren't sure what to think. I gave some perspective on it. And you actually talked about it a little bit today. First, before I break the news of what your opinion is to the crowd, I'd like to ask everybody in the chat. I'm gonna give you guys 1 second to respond. How do you feel about Jay-Z's deal with the NFL? In case you guys haven't heard, Jay-Z is going to partner with the NFL to help them with musical selections and also social activism. And there are people who feel that Jay is kind of selling out the cause, that he's selling out Kaepernick, and he's sort of pushing against what the community's been trying to do. And then there are other people who say, look, go get your money, go do your thing. In fact, there may be good intentions. We don't know everything's going on. Mixed bag. So what are your thoughts? Let me see what you guys' perspectives are. And Nicole, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read back some of the responses, and then what I'm going to do is also play a video that you did on your Instagram, which is Nicole D. Price, by the way. And so everybody can kind of hear your take on it and get your perspective. So give me 1 second, Nicole. I'm fiddling with my screen here. I'm gonna try to read some of the comments. Let's see. I see Carl says doesn't much matter to me. Let me see here. Nakia says it's business, just like Cap and everybody else. Antonio says sell out. Ramona says disappointed in Jay. Queen Jet Black says hi, Nicole. See, okay, Queen Jet Black. Okay, I thought that was somebody here flirting again, because people start flirting when Nicole comes into the building. Let me see. Undecided says trade the creator beats. I think Jay is a smart man, icon. I want to be able to. I don't want to call him a sellout. His team's Black, label Black, his brand is Black. Tiffany says he's getting his money, and I'm getting mine. It's all business. Super Mega says I don't care. It ain't getting us no reparations. Okay. Super Trucker says Kaepernick sold himself out. Or why aren't people mad at him? Woo. So lots of mixed opinions here. Okay. So Nicole, I took the liberty of downloading your insightful analysis, and what I'm going to do, you're going to hear your own voice in a minute, but I'm going to mute that for a second because I want to share the screen. So give me 1 second here. You know how we are. We slow with the technology. But here we go. Okay, so I got you here. There's your audio. There's your video. Boom. All right. So there's Nicole, and she's on her Instagram, which is Nicole D. Price. And what I'm going to do is let you guys hear Nicole's perspective, and then I'm going to let Nicole analyze what Nicole just said, so we can all kind of get a point of view. Here we go.
Friday, y'all, and I'm so glad y'all are here. Listen, the NFL and Jay-Z are partnering, and people have all kinds of opinions about it. And one of the things that I learned in one of my previous roles was that opinions in today's environment are not as valuable as they used to be. In fact, everybody can have an opinion and share opinions and look like credible sources for those opinions, when in fact, nah. There's no way for any of us to know what the intentions are of Jay-Z or what the intentions are of the NFL. You can look at some past history and try to determine what that is, but there's no way for us to currently know what the intentions are. And here's why I bring that up. think what you want to think about the partnership between Jay and the NFL. I'm not going to tell you what to think. But here's what I want you to know about your personal life. Whenever there's a problem, an issue, a challenge, and a solution is presented to you, and the first thing you do is think to be critical, let me just say that is not feedback. That's not credible opinionating. What that is resistance. And resistance sometimes keeps us from moving forward. I have said it before and I will say it again. If people try to change, if organizations try to change, if groups try to change, and then in their attempt to change, we don't give them the opportunity to do better, to be different, to demonstrate something differently, then what is the benefit of wanting them to change? You got to try something first and then share how you feel about it. And once you've done that, then you can share some feedback. Now, are there exceptions to this rule? Absolutely. When somebody has consistently shown you over and over and over again that they're not there for your people. But some of the folks complaining about Jay-Z are the same ones who were spending $300-$400 for a concert ticket to sit in the rafters. And so clearly y'all trust him to do something. Y'all know Jay from the streets. The brother understand the struggle. So I don't know. I don't get it. I got a whole bunch of other things I can say about that, but I don't want y'all to fall out of love with me because y'all know I like to be liked. And listen, I got to stop wearing these glasses on the Filter-Free Fridays. I hate this little, or stop being so cheap and always get anti-reflective lenses. Anyway, it's Filter-Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.
All right. So Filter-Free Friday, you took down the filter and you decided to lay out into something that I don't see you do a whole lot. I follow you on Instagram, and I don't really see you take like controversial topics on like this. So when you were talking about Jay-Z, I said, okay, this is interesting. I want to see what she has to say. So I saw you mention things that stood out to me as you mentioned folks' intentions, and you don't know what their intentions are. You talked about resistance, almost like resistance to, not so much resistance to change, but resistance to having a willingness to even allow somebody to change, right? A resistance, you telling me you want to change, but I don't believe you, so I'm going to banish you and not deal with you. Can you speak a little bit to that in terms of what you were saying in this video? Oh, give me 1 second. Sorry, I have to unmute you. My apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I feel like I should share a couple biases I have, actually 3. So one in particular is that my son is an economics and math major. So he regularly tries to get me to buy into this concept of capitalism. And he's always arguing with me when I lower my fees or do things for organizations for free. And so that's one bias. I have him kind of in my head talking to me. The other bias is I want people, I'm not really a social justice warrior. I'm a problem solver. And so when I think about what it looks like to change some of the persistent problems that we've had, there are kind of 3 types of people. They're the people who are the tillers. They're the ones that go in and play in the NFL before there are any Black players, they get treated poorly. There are those of us who are planters. We've been watching the games forever. The league is predominantly Black on the field. And then there are the people who are what I call the weed pullers. You can't just garden, tilling, and planting. You have to have people who pull weeds, or weeds kind of take over the garden. And I would call bringing awareness to social justice issues weed pulling. And weed pullers, this is a fact. Weed pullers never are successful inside of organizations. When you were at Syracuse, you did some weed pulling. And when you did some of that weed pulling, it became very obvious that you had to separate your relationship. Inside of organizations, it is really, really hard to be a weed puller. The system doesn't support it. And that's factual. But the 3 things that kind of stand out to me when I think about this partnership between the NFL and Jay-Z, one is capitalism. Most people buy into it when it's about their money. The second one is I'm a business owner. And if you work for me, you sue me, I'm going to make sure that as part of that settlement that you don't come work there anymore. So that's another bias I have. And then 3, I just personally, this is my opinion, I have an issue with the silent majority. I listened to Sean King's podcast today where he said Jay-Z was wrong. I listened to it 3 times. And one of the issues that he kept bringing up was that he was speaking for Cap because Cap's his friend. And also he was saying that, there's several NFL coaches who are looking for quarterbacks and that Cap's better than half the NFL quarterbacks in the league. I hear you. Why is Cap silent? I haven't heard one word from him. I don't hear from him on this topic at all. And so when Eric Reed got his job back, when we're boycotting the NFL, are we boycotting Eric? Does Cap watch Eric play? That's where I'm just kind of like, what is happening here? Cap silent. And so if the coaches want Cap on the team and the commissioner is saying no, why haven't we heard from those coaches? If Cap thinks that this is wrong, why haven't we heard from Cap? And again, I'll say that that's just my opinion. I just don't like the silent majority. If you have something to say, then speak up. But my Filter Free Friday was really just more about people in their personal lives. If we want people to get better, if we're going to call out their wrongs, we can't be part of a cancel culture. We have to be open and ready. If they say, okay, I hear you, I'm ready, then what's going to be are we going to still act the same way? Because let me tell you what, if I ask you, if you come at me and you're like, Nicole, I'm not doing business with you because you did X. Well, when I say I hear you and I want to change it and you still like, nah, I'm still not going to do business with you because in 2015 you did X. That cancel culture in my mind makes it really, really hard for people to change. I know I wouldn't.
Well, that's an interesting point you just made about cancel culture. I don't know if you guys are aware of cancel culture. Cancel culture is pretty prevalent right now, where people get mad and they're like, oh, you said something I don't like, so I'm never gonna mess with you ever again. And we end up throwing away a lot of good people that way, a lot of good relationships that way. There's that joke, the joke, I don't believe it. It's a stereotype, but some people believe it, and we've all seen this, where they said that white folks can disagree on 99 things and agree on one and still work together, whereas black folks can agree on 99 things and disagree on one, and then we won't work together. I don't believe that to be completely true, but Chris Broussard brought that up he's with Fox Sports. He was on the other day, and he brought that up, and it made me laugh because, in the community, I've seen that, where people literally will love, 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 don't love. Now you're done. I'm kicking you out of my life because you voted for somebody I don't like, or you said something I don't agree with, or whatever. And I think that's a horrible concept. And
I have data around that.
Oh,
I have data around that. It's not race related. It's actually how you make decisions. 80% of us make decisions based on logic and reason. And people who make decisions based on logic and reason tend to be objective and tend to be able to continue to work with you, even if you, from an emotional standpoint or from a loyalty standpoint, haven't done something they appreciate. The other 20% of us tend to make decisions based on empathy and compassion, and what would I do if it were me, and have you been loyal to me? And it seems to be sometimes that Black and brown people tend to have more of that empathetic and compassionate approach to decision making. But what's more true is that we're just community minded versus individualist. But living here in America, you are being influenced by that individualistic nature. It's the reason why if I call you and I say, hey, Boyce, can I get a discount? You're going to be like, I got people to feed. And I am not going to call Kaepernick a sellout, but I will say when he settled the case, I don't understand how I would need someone to give me realistic factual data showing me of someone suing their employer and settling the case and then still working for said employer when having the job was not part of that settlement. I just have not seen it. I have not seen it. In all my work in HR, I've never seen it.
Wow. Everybody who just came in, I want you to know I'm talking to. I'm speaking to Nicole Price, who is the author of the book, The Lively Paradox, but she's also a leadership expert. She understands organizations and corporate culture and things like that. And she's able to see this Kaepernick situation from a perspective that a lot of us can't see it, or maybe a lot of us can. A lot of you have experience. I mean, if you've ever worked for somebody or ever worked for a corporation, raise your hand. Say something in the chat. Say yes or no. Yes or no. Have you ever worked for an employer? And say, give me a yes or no. And then after you answer that first question, I'm gonna ask you another question. Have you ever seen a situation where somebody has sued their employer and settled the lawsuit and then got rehired by that same employer? Do you think if you had a business and somebody sued you and you had to pay them out and you were mad about it, and then the person said, yeah, well, I expect you to give me a job now. Would you hire that person? Would you bring that person back? I'm not trying to say that it's wrong for Cap to have his own expectations, but that's a good point, Nicole. I didn't think about that, what you brought up. Can you speak more to that? In terms of that, and also you mentioned something about Kaepernick being silent. I ain't gonna lie, that always bothered me. I was like, what is this whole like, I'm not talking, but I'm gonna retweet other people who are saying the things I agree with. I'm sitting like, well, why aren't you talking? Oh, well, because if he talks, he's gonna lose money because the lawsuit says that he has signed some agreement or whatever. He doesn't want to mess up his lawsuit. So what you're telling me is that Kaepernick's actions are being shaped by protecting his bank account. Well, if that's the case, then you're a different kind of activist. That's not quite, you're not in that same Muhammad Ali space where Muhammad Ali said what needed to be said, didn't care how much it cost him. You sound a little bit like Jay-Z. Jay-Z's doing things because he's protecting his bank account. So what makes Cap and Jay-Z that much different? Because if you think about this, Nicole, I'm gonna ask you your take on this, and then please feel free to speak on anything I've just said. I figured it out. I had to process it, damn near meditate on it, because I told Alicia, I said, I don't know what I think about this. I got to think about this. And what the kicker was is I said, okay, I get it. A lot of this, he's a sellout or not a sellout, comes down to one basic thing. He didn't get Kaepernick's approval before making the deal, and he didn't bring Kaepernick along. If he had brought Kaepernick along, or if he had gotten Cap's blessing, then all this sellout talk would probably disappear. What are your thoughts on some of what I just said?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I did listen to Jay-Z's interview on Charlamagne the God show. And one of the things that he said, or that was brought up, was that he has been in conversation with Kaepernick, but he said, I'm not his boss. I can't tell him to come along. And what a delineation that he made was that Cap's goal was to bring awareness to the social injustices related to police brutality. And he did that. The goal was never about his job. The goal was about bringing awareness to police brutality and the policing of Black and brown bodies. He said, if Cap wants to come along, he'll bring him along, but he can't control, basically, I'm going to paraphrase, I can't control that man. Now, here's what I'll say about the capitalism part of what you said. Deciding that I'm going to be silent. He was silent even before the lawsuit. And I'm sure his lawyers told him to be silent. It was the smart thing to do if you want your money. But you can't live by capitalism and then expect other people not to live by capitalism. And that's just, I don't understand. To me, I don't understand that. And I'm open to other people's opinions on the matter. But if you live by that sword, you die by that sword. That's how that works. And then, when people are like, Jay is a sellout, I personally know a person who is not in jail right now because of Jay-Z paying people's bail money based on the injustices of the cash bail system. And so how can we, maybe you'll disagree with this one decision, but don't cancel Jay-Z. Why don't we wait and see what happens? Because if Goodell is saying all of this is causing us noise, that we can't just enjoy the game of football, that is a very true statement. And people are like, well, I won't listen to billionaires. Well, first point, Roger Goodell's not a billionaire. He's worth like $60 million, which is a lot, but that's not billion. There's a very big difference between 65 million and billion. And if you don't know the difference, I want you to give me the rest of that, because there's a very big difference. I want that 935 million if you don't know the difference between billion and million. But he's not, people act like he's ultimately controlling things. CEOs of organizations aren't like the commissioner aren't ultimately controlling things. There's a board of people of whom you probably don't even know their names actually controlling what Goodell is doing. And they're like, hey, we want this noise to go away. So Jay-Z's talking about it in his songs. Beyonce, they're not showing up. They don't, to saying that they won't perform in our Super Bowls, that kind of stuff. That's causing them noise. And they were like, okay, we hear you. Tell us what to do. Who else better? Tell me who else better who's willing to understand the capitalism component and understand the social justice component. Who else better? Who can understand both those things? I don't know who that would be.
Well, let me say, well, I personally think you'd be better. I think you'd be a great person for them to hire for that job. But, I'll say this, Everybody, by the way, if you haven't done this yet, please hit the thumbs up button, share and subscribe button and all this stuff. Just a reminder also, I'm speaking to Nicole Price, the author of the book, The Lively Paradox. She's a leadership expert. You can follow her on Instagram at Nicole D. Price, D as in David. Also, if you happen to want to come to Atlanta, I'll be in Atlanta the weekend of August 23rd, partly for the We Buy Black convention, but also Sunday, I'm going to do an all-day investment seminar. So if you'd like to come out, go to drboyceatlanta.com. That's drboyceatlanta.com. So and also Nicole will be at the All Black National Convention. She's going to be one of our keynote speakers, actually. And so if you guys want to come out, if you're feeling black and you love being black and blackness matters to you more than almost anything else, they come to the All Black National Convention. You can be as black as you want to be, and ain't nobody gonna tell us what we can and cannot do. Well, why? Because unlike the NFL and all this other stuff, we own that. That's ours. So ain't no such thing as being too black. So whether you agree with Jay-Z, we want you to come out and be black. Whether you agree with Kaepernick, come on out and be black. Because I'm gonna tell you, one of the things that ends up dividing black people is that usually when black people are going against each other, it's a white man that owns the building. We want to change that narrative. Now, one thing I want to mention also, Nicole, that I'm sure you, as being a leadership expert and organizational expert, can give some insight on this. You mentioned the battle I had with Syracuse. You know, when I kind of felt, towards Syracuse University, the way I guess Kaepernick felt about the NFL. You know, Kaepernick was expressing himself in a specific way. It didn't fit well with the organization. Therefore, next thing you know, he's gone, and it becomes a big issue. I had that same issue at Syracuse. I was I'm black 24/7 all the time, everywhere I go. I ain't never changed. Been black my whole life. And at Syracuse, I decided to be, to use my PhD in a way that I thought was effective for the community. But the problem is that they came with controversy. It came with, I remember being body slammed by Fox News, where they came at me really hard and ambushed my chancellor. And I became labeled. I was labeled as this black troublemaker who wasn't sitting there being quiet. I didn't shut up and dribble, so to speak, which for academicians is maybe like, shut up and write research papers, right? And so we got into it. We got into it big time. It was ugly. And I didn't know, I was never silent. There was never a time where I was like, oh, I can't be silent. I just can't. If it's in me, I got to let it out. My mama used to tell me that my mouth will either make me great or get me killed, because if there was something going on and I felt the need to say something, I did not care what the cost was. Now, here was the interesting thing. When I was there, and as I went through that experience and I look at it in hindsight, things make sense to me. As I get older and really reflect on parts of my life, I have a different insight every time I think about it again. And two things I recall from that experience was, one, I look back on that and I was mad that they were trying to push me out. But in hindsight, I realized, wait, I had to go. Like, I had to go. Because I didn't understand it. I was like, well, wait a minute. Because what they did was white folks were actually verifying this. They were telling me about all these black people that were getting hired and promoted because of the stink out raids. They were like, they're so self-conscious about being called racist that they're going out and hiring black people, even people that aren't qualified, just so they can fight against what you've been saying. And I've been like, well, why don't they just work with me? Just give me what I deserve. But it got to a point where I had to go. So it was almost like when you become that activist and you are the center of attention, you become a little bit toxic in that environment where they're like, we'll deal with anybody else, but we will not deal with you. You got to go. So in hindsight, I look back at that and I understand why I had to go. And if I was them, I would have kicked me out too. I would have wanted me to go too. Now I got money to go. Now, mind you, so I wasn't complaining, but it was like, again, like Kaepernick. I didn't get millions, but I got about $400,000. That ain't bad, right? Two, the second thing I noticed was that, similar to what you said, people think the CEO has all the power. The CEO or the head of the institution, the head of the university, the head of the corporation can just come down and just, like a dictator, just make whatever decision they want. And when I look back at that, it wasn't like that at all. I really believe in hindsight that the chancellor of the university understood exactly where I was coming from. Her name was Nancy Cantor, and she was a liberal white woman. And she understood what I said. I said, don't you understand? Like, they haven't hired or promoted a black person in this department for 100 years. That's racist. She got it. The problem she had, though, similar to maybe what Roger Goodell might be doing, who knows, is, when Goodell is deciding what to do with the NFL, he's got all these owners to deal with, these team owners who are billionaires who might have a different point of view. She had to deal with the racist people that were underneath her who were like, we're not going to let you, make decisions with this guy that we don't agree with. We're going to give you hell if you do this. So it got to the point where she made a deal with me that was almost separate, like off the books from what everybody else knew was going on. And I didn't understand it then because I was young, but I look back at that and it makes sense now. Can you speak to a little bit more of that in terms of organizations, how they run, and what you might guess could be going on here with the NFL reaching out to Jay-Z and all this other stuff?
Yeah, I would call you a weed puller, and we need weed pullers in order. If culture is a garden and we're trying to make everything better from a social justice standpoint, we need weed pullers. But weed pullers won't make it inside of organizations. You can't fight. You can try to fight the system from within it, but it doesn't look like kneeling. It doesn't look like speaking out. It looks like political savvy. It looks like getting support networks built. It's strategy. It's playing poker. It is not just, hey, let me just say what is on my heart. That's not what that doesn't work inside of organizations. If somebody wants to, I see that as a fact. If somebody wants to show me evidence that proves it differently in any organization, I'm willing to see it. Because even in your Black businesses that, for people who are owning businesses right now, tell me a situation where they feel like somebody on their team is a noisemaker and doesn't fit into the culture for whatever reason, and they keep that person. I'd love to see it. I'd like to also think that if I were an owner of an NFL team, that I would hire Kaepernick to be a quarterback. I'd like to think that about myself. But then what happens when the media is controlling the narrative? Then what happens when half your fan base decides to start not coming? And then you're losing. I don't know how much money they make on Sundays, but I don't like it when I lose $5. I can't imagine losing 5 million in a Sunday. And so I think sometimes we're trying to hold people to a different standard than which we're willing to hold ourselves to. And when you tell me that you got $400,000, what they're doing is paying you because they know they were wrong. The chancellor probably knew. This is an opinion. I always like to separate when I'm talking opinion versus fact. This is my opinion. I know this is wrong. This system is bigger than me. Let me pay you to go because it's not going to work out. I need to work with people who can get their work done with minimum noise. It's actually a freaking competency for which HR professionals decide who is promotable or not. And so when I think about the fact that Kaepernick is talented, he went to the Pro Bowl, he's super smart. Those are things that Sean King was saying today. I'm like, how many of us know someone who's been hired or promoted who was less qualified? We can look at baseball and see that, Jackie Robinson wasn't the best baseball player. He was the one who had the temperament, who could keep the noise level down. And I think we're like losing sight of the reality of what race looks like in America. These teams are not primarily owned by white people, and all the players on the field are Black, just because there's racist policy that causes these things to occur over time. When you were in your role at Syracuse, it's not that there was, that you weren't qualified or that you weren't talented. It's racist policy over time that disproportionately impacts Black people. And so I'm here to say there's nothing wrong with Black people, like Dr. Ibram Kendi says, except for we think there's something wrong with Black people. Nicole is not here saying that there's anything wrong with us. Because another thing that's bothering me is people are like, Jay-Z is went against the cause and we can't stick together. It's like, if the man is working for social justice, actually getting them to do something, if local teams are actually working with their local police departments, which is what my business's idea was, you can't fix this problem on a national level because Texas is different from New York, which is different from LA, which is different from Kansas City. You have to have each one of those individual teams work with their local police departments to figure out what are the challenges and then work on unconscious bias in policing, period. And if you don't do it that way, it's not going to be solved. I came up with that solution 3 years ago. And so if Jay-Z can help them figure that out, then please be there, help them figure that out, because ultimately we're trying to stop somebody's kid from being murdered. That's what we're trying to stop. And if Cap has to lose a job because we stopped somebody's kid from getting murdered, collateral damage. And I'm sure he knew that when he took a knee.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. I mean, I remember back when I was in grad school and I started being very vocal and radical. I would write these articles and things like that. And even back then, even before my career started, I had people, friendly people, warning me that, it's going to hurt your chances of getting a job if you keep saying these things. But again, I couldn't help it. I just had to let it out. But I remember my mother kind of saying to me, she said, well, that the person who gets on the front line is usually not the one who benefits from their sacrifice. And the basic logic I had was, I said, well, there's some people who sacrificed for me to be where I am right now. They didn't get to enjoy the benefits that I enjoy. So it's charging to the game. That's what you're supposed to do, in my opinion. And I agree with you. I think, excuse me, I think the reaction that we've had, that some of us have had to Jay-Z taking this role with the NFL and the effect on Kaepernick is partly, it could be a reflection of us focusing on the wrong thing. The thing we're focusing on, and I think Jay actually brought that point up, is the thing we should be focusing on is, as you mentioned, keeping somebody's baby from getting shot, social justice in the community, getting the NFL to do the right thing. But for a lot of people, the goal was get Kaepernick a job, get him hired by a football team. And I personally don't care if Kaepernick gets a job or not because I don't respect him for his sacrifice, but Kaepernick has been well compensated for the sacrifices he made. I mean, that Nike deal, when Nike features you on an ad like that, you're getting millions and millions of dollars for that. That was a huge campaign. The NFL paid him millions of dollars. So sure, Cap can't play quarterback, but you don't get the NFL careers don't last that long anyway. So I personally was disappointed that Kaepernick let his people kind of go out and push against Jay-Z. He's a young guy, so maybe he'll see it differently one day. But it came off almost like a little bit selfish, almost like the pastor who says, it's that we're all here to serve God in church as long as I get to be the pastor. If y'all don't want me to be the pastor, then we're gonna burn the whole church down. And that ain't the case. You got to think differently from that. So Nicole Price, that's who I'm talking to. Nicole Price, author of the book The Lively Paradox. I hope you guys will go check that out. Nicole, what is your website, by the way, so people can go support you?
livelyparadox.com.
livelyparadox.com. I highly recommend you guys go check it out. Nicole's very smart. I talk to her a lot, and her insights are invaluable. And that's why I brought her in, because I love your perspective on it. So I'll let you get the last word on this. Did you have any other sort of closing thoughts before we head out?
I do. And I don't know if Colin Kaepernick will watch this, but I think sometimes God closes doors to open new ones. He can make far more money now with the notoriety that he's achieved doing something else. Mm-hmm. He is now on a much greater platform than being a quarterback in the NFL could ever take him if he'd used the opportunity. He could go on a national speaking tour and make the same kind of money that Hillary Clinton and people like that command because of his name. And I would challenge anybody on your feed without using their Google machine, as my grandmother would call it, to name me 25 quarterbacks in the NFL. But everybody knows Colin Kaepernick's name. This whole scandal has been helpful to him if he can open his eyes and see how helpful.
Wow. I think that's excellent advice, and I'd be stunned if no one said that, because you're right, it's crystal clear. But then again, I don't know. I can't figure out his whole strategy. I don't doubt that he believes in supporting Black people. I think he's a good brother. I just think that some of the things I see don't make a lot of sense. So I would love to have information on why is it that you've been so silent? Why is it that you aren't moving on? Like I said, it's like a bad relationship. Sometimes you just got to move on. You can't stay mad at the person. You just got to move on and find a better love. And, because that great person you're looking for might be around the corner, but you can't see them who's in front of you if you keep looking back. So don't drive through life looking through your rearview mirror. You will crash the car eventually. And so I think it's time for Cap to move on from the NFL. Like you said, he's got this great legacy. Use it. He earned it. He deserves it. Use it and benefit the community. Somebody said, get him on the show. Well, I can't bring you on the show if you don't talk. If you come on the show, you got to open your damn mouth. So if he starts talking, just know, if anybody knows Cap, tell him he's invited to come in, but he's got to talk. You can't come on the show and retweet your words. You actually they have to come out of your mouth. And if he starts talking, I'll be the first one to listen, because I love to hear what he has to say. So thank you very much, Nicole Price. Nicole Price, author of the book, The Lively Paradox. Her website is livelyparadox.com. That's livelyparadox.com. She will be speaking at the All Black National Convention, which is the weekend of September 27th in Houston. Willie D from the Ghetto Boys will be there. A whole lot of people. I don't even have the list in front of me, but it's a ton of great people that's going to be there. Sharif Abdul Malik from We Buy Black, a lot of great people. It's going to be a great weekend. And so if you want to be Black, super Black, and have no filters on your Blackness, come on out to the All Black National Convention. That's allblacknationalconvention.com, allblacknationalconvention.com. And don't forget, Atlanta, I'll be there next week. you can go to drboyceatlanta.com. That's drboyceatlanta.com. Hit the thumbs up button, share, and subscribe button. And thank you once again, Nicole. I am truly.
Thanks for having me.
All right, absolutely. And Nicole, you just stay on the line. I'm going to shut this down, and so I can say a proper goodbye.